I have the privilege of following you, sir, and leading into a panel of great doers. And I think the question for people who just saw that video is, what's a doer? Who's a doer? What's the roadmap? And we want to answer that in sort of the next 35 minutes or less. But I can make it very simple. You're all doers. If you're here at Arctic Circle seeking some form of connection or inspiration or action you can take, who you are, where you are, with whatever capacity you have, you're on the road already. And the roadmap is merely an instrument that we've created after more than 20 years of climate negotiation that was so important, that began in Rio and took us to Berlin and through Kyoto with a detour, and then a roadmap and an official sense in Bali that led us to Paris. And last year, we were meant to implement that in Marrakesh. And people showed up despondent. There was a US election and America's not participating, and what do we do now? And nobody at the Do Fest was allowed to think that way because of this man, who got up every morning at 7 a.m. and convened people from NGOs, from investment platforms, heads of state, entrepreneurs, social activists, and they all put their fingerprints into something different and terribly positive and said, let's take those 20 years and put it into 20 sentences. Let's put it on a single page and make it meaningful. Let's find ourselves what we want to do. Now, you've already described it much more eloquently than I can, so I want to put it in the most simple terms. Roads are something we've always built for humanity. We inevitably need them. We put them forward. Sometimes they're great roads like the Silk Road. Sometimes they're roads that span continents. Sometimes they're roads in the water like the Sail Pass that Nainoa Thompson had spoke about in the Pacific. But there always our inevitable, inexorable need to connect with one another. And a map, we all know what a map is. I used to love maps. I used to study them fastidiously, try to figure out what every exit was on a highway, understand a map. My kids never see paper maps. You know, in Silicon Valley, they play with Waze. They crowdsource the mapping. They tell you what's going on and what the traffic is and how to course correct in real time with absolute agility. What's the fastest way to get from here to there? And they constantly communicate in a real-time exercise. And that's what this roadmap is. It is something that is meant to be dynamic and not static. It is something that is an invitation to be inclusive for all of you and not exclusive in a back room of high-level negotiators or government appointees. So even if you're in government and you're leading, as Senator Murkowski is and the others gathered here from so many great nations, it is an equal invitation to everybody to participate. And it's modeled on what you did here for the Arctic Circle. And so I'm grateful for your leadership, sir, for convening us. We have some prime doers here on stage. We have a head of state, one of the great heads of state, Honorable Henry Puna from the Cook Islands. We have one of the great social entrepreneurs of all time, the founder of Conservation International. We have my wonderful colleague, the founder of the Emerson Collective and its investment platform. And we have the managing director of the European Climate Foundation, Christoph Wolff. So I'm going to start, I think would be appropriate, to start with the woman who organized this conference last year in Marrakesh and said precisely because nobody was going is why we needed to be there and convene all of these people together. And I'm going to ask you, Lorraine, to begin us by telling us what inspired the roadmap and where we go from here.